Coming up this week in IT.
It's not intelligence until it can do self-harm or it can lie to you. When it can lie to you purposely, and lying is not giving a bad answer. Lying is, I know what the right answer is, but I choose not to give it to you, right? Then you start dealing with intelligence.
I don't know if Ed realized it, but he just made up a really cool acronym, Human Organic Operator. It's WHO.
I mean, hopefully and ideally, it's not replace, it's enhance, folks.
Because it's really difficult for an organization like Microsoft to protect for such an attack. It's easier for the stock analyst because if you see the code as a human, you will know, okay, it's probably malicious.
Hi, I'm Russell Smith, editorial director of Petri.com. On this special edition of the show, I'm joined by the hosts of the Microsoft Security Insights show, Rod Trent, Edward Walton and Brodie Cassell, plus security specialist Thijs Lecomte, where we discuss the impact of AI on security. We'll be looking at how artificial intelligence will improve security tools and services, whether it really is intelligent and if it could completely replace security analysts, and how to keep one step ahead of the bad guys as they discover their new AI superpowers. So without further ado, I'm going to give everybody a quick introduction and then we'll get straight down to business. So first up, we have Rod Trent, who's a senior cloud security and AI advocate at Microsoft. Thijs Lecomte, who's a security operations center analyst. Brodie Cassell, who's a Microsoft 365 security compliance and identity consultant. Edward Walton, who's a security architect and consultant for Microsoft 365 and Azure. Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit first about AI as it stands today in the role of security, because obviously, in the last, 6 months or so, we've all been talking about ChatGPT. It's the fastest growing application in history or something along those lines. But artificial intelligence, of course, isn't new. It's certainly not new in the realm of security. So I wondered if you could set out a little bit for people who are maybe not so aware of, the various tools that you're all using or working with as part of your everyday roles, the role that AI is playing at the moment, and whether it's something that's widely deployed or is it just a kind of a novelty at this stage. So I'm going to throw that out to Rod to start with.
Good.
There you go. So I get to frame this a little bit. This is awesome. I appreciate that. And first off, thank you so much for having us. Myself, Brodie, and Edward will talk as we go along. We're part of a weekly podcast show, whatever, called Microsoft Security Insights. And we've had this discussion even most recently, as you can imagine, right? Because all the hotness right now is around artificial intelligence, or this latest iteration of what's most popular, which is generative AI. Generative AI on its own, for those that aren't familiar what this thing actually is, because I have to set the stage there, because I have conversation after conversation, even with my own family members who read and believe the news articles and the headlines that AI is going to destroy humanity. What we were talking about in respect to this generative AI is simply a tool, right? That it's very good. It's somewhat intelligent. I would say it's fake intelligence, which we'll have that discussion as we go along. But it enables responses to your queries in a more formal, more English style language response, right? That's all this is intended to do. Generative AI is built on what we call data models that kind of sit on the back end. There's these GPUs, massive data centers that sift through these massive pieces of data, looking for and architecting and stringing these responses back together so it is a bit more understandable. But understand that what is on the back end is these large data sets that has all of that information in it. So there's still a human somewhere that's creating and training these models so that they're very specific. In our discussion today, as we start talking about this, we're going to talk more, be more focused on the security aspect of this, right? So this is an important thing, particularly from my perspective, I think particularly from Microsoft, in that going back to what I just talked about, it's those large data models that sit on the back end that is supplying those responses, right? So from a Microsoft perspective, what we're trying to do from security perspective for our customers is give our customers access to the threat intelligence that our customers help Microsoft produce every single day. I forget what the number is now, trillions and trillions and trillions of signals that are generated through Microsoft products every single day that is looked at from a machine learning perspective and then fed back into the system, fed back actual security value components that are fed back in the systems that our customers can take advantage of. So that's feeding these data models for security. So when customers use something like generative AI from Microsoft, they're getting direct access to that threat intelligence so that they know from a security perspective, they're looking at something that is absolutely of security value. And I guess that's probably the best way to frame that. And we'll move on to someone else.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is that there are two sides to this: the generative side, which is what ChatGPT does, and then learning basically from these huge data sets using machine learning.
Yeah, there's kind of two sides, but it's the same coin,
Yep,
right?
yep.
It's absolutely.
Yep. Okay, all right, okay. I'm going to hand over to Thijs, because you are probably using this every day in your role as it stands today.
Yes.
How effective is all of this stuff that we have today?
Well, today I think first of all, it is a great product. It is a great stack, because if you're looking into, for example, Microsoft 365 Defender, which is getting all of the signals from all of those devices, all of those endpoints, it is amazing to see what it's able to generate, what it's able to show you as a security analyst, which is of value. So I think there it's an amazing setup we have, and it's being used day in, day out, because nobody has the time to look into every sign into Azure AD, because for each organization, there's just way too many. So people use things like identity protection, which also use machine learning models in the backend to identify suspicious signings. What I think is still lacking, it's the final step. It's looking into a bit further. Okay, we have this signing which is out of the ordinary, but can we place it into context? And that's what I'm hoping for, which might bring AI to the table. It's looking into context of a user of a company, because if a suspicious silence happens, for example, it might be because that person is traveling to another country for work or for fun. And that's still lacking. There's no way for Microsoft to say, okay, we know that person is traveling, we've gotten that data to other sources, so we'll dismiss the incident. And I think taking that context, both from the user and the business, and putting that onto the table, that will, for me, be a huge deal once that's finally coming out. Because at the moment, yes, the AI is sifting through tons of logs, but it's still missing that final step, meaning some of the incidents just are way too noisy at this point.
Well, and I think that's,
sorry.
I think that's important. Just want to call that out. That's awesome. One of the primary things that our customers have difficulty with is this, what we call impossible sign-in. Someone that signs in from where they're supposed to be, but then all of a sudden within an hour, they're across the globe. And a lot of times these produce false positives. So this is an awesome spot, for that large language model or whatever, the AI, to be able to kind of look through that and identify that quickly and accurately, because our customers spent a lot of time trying to figure that out.
Good point.
Okay.
Yeah, and as a customer, it's really difficult to take that final step, because if you want to automate that, it's almost it is possible, but it's almost impossible for an end customer to spend that time, spend that R&D into automation to take that final step. And I think indeed it's the most difficult step in the cycle. But once we're there, that will be a game changer at that point.
Yeah, great point. I mean, let's leverage these technologies, these capabilities, and reduce the amount of overhead, the busy work, the time it takes in order to set up this automation. Let's free individuals up. Let's free defenders up for proactive and reactive work at the highest complexity. It just makes sense, and I'm looking forward to how this is going to evolve over time, because it's not going to be a a replacement for analysts and defenders. It's going to be an augmentation, an enhancement that's going to make everyone's lives easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
Mhm.
I mean, you have to look at AI, and first of all, you have to get on a side or not beyond the topic of this particular session. Is AI real, right? Or are we just looking at advanced automation and query that's put into a more consumable medium for the operator to use? So we could debate whether AI has manifested in a way that a lot of people think it is. For me, I believe there are some instances where the technology mimics AI, but it's still machine learning to me, right? And so when you said that there's generative AI and then there's AI, well, you're still looking at huge language models and you're looking at huge data sets. And so there are a couple of organic things that need to be considered, right? You know, I think that AI in the security realm would truly have come, come to manifest when it could do a few things. When it doesn't necessarily have an overwhelming desire to give me an answer, and when it can ask for help. Okay. And so when I look at this, I was scribbling some notes based on some of the things for the show about, LLMs, large language models. I would like to expand that acronym to include a couple of words, would be large language automation advanced, machine learning, because that's what it's doing. The more content that it gets and the more results that it gets, is able to come back and suggest a series of actions or inaction. Now, sometimes AI is inaction. I do nothing. So when I see both of those operating in conjunction with human or organic operators, right, then you know that you're getting really close to it. It's a great tool. It is a tool. It's going to require a lot of things that are not inherent in the tool to come to fruition, which is sharing of the data, because what is not public knowledge is quickly going to be a public record is quickly going to become private record. And so your large language models are only going to be as effective to the access that they have, right? And that's also, it's greenfield for different type of attacks against AI. I was working on a couple hypothetical attacks like poison the well, right? If I give you bad information, you will give me a bad answer, right? And we'll go that or incomplete answer. How it is working in security, I think speed. I don't think replacement all up. I believe allowing certain conditions or certain considerations to happen faster for the human operator who ultimately has to make the decision, right? Yes, no, up, down, false positive. So I'm excited to see exactly what all of the competitors in this market are doing with this particular tool. Yeah.
Well put.
Okay, great. So I love that term, human organic operator. So so we're not talking about a complete revolution at this stage. We're talking about a tool that's going to augment the work of somebody who's working, an analyst, for instance, who's working in a security operations center to help them do their work faster. Yeah. Okay. All right. So obviously AI can be used by organizations to improve their security, but this stuff is already being used by malicious actors. So is this going to be another cat and mouse game between how fast the security tools can basically keep up with the AI that they implement and what the bad guys are going to be doing?
Yeah. Has it ever stopped? I mean, this has just been cat and mouse ongoing for years now, right? I mean, it's a double-edged sword. It's a huge challenge. It's being identified by global leaders, defense organizations across the planet. Yeah, it's going to be a cat and mouse game. We need to find a balance and we need to make sure that we keep up. But it's important to understand, AI is here to improve the knowledge, to understand cybersecurity threats and cyber risk by consuming billions and billions of artifacts. And it analyzes those relationships, like threats like malicious files and suspicious IP addresses and insider risk in seconds or minutes. And if you have adversaries who are leveraging the same capability and the same technology to enhance their impact, their potential to impact an organization or a community or people, then absolutely we need to make sure that we're keeping up. I think that's the industry in a nutshell. It's a constant cat and mouse game. It's a constant attackers, defenders. I think the mantra is attackers generally have the advantage because they can think of things that haven't been thought of before, and defenders are consistently playing catch up. Maybe at one stage in the future, we have predictive defense solutions and defenders have the advantage. I'd love to see that, but we certainly have to keep on our toes.
Well, and I appreciate
Yeah,
that. That's
I think-
one of the things that kind of brought this to mind was that before I go on, I don't know if Ed realized it, but he just made up a really cool acronym: Human Organic Operator. It's WHO. So
That's good.
it's like an owl, I guess. Yeah, but you bring up a good point, Brodie. A piece of what we're thinking about here, those large language models, those data models that sit in the back end, they need to continuously be updated. I think that's really where the value prospect comes into play, right? It's that trusted vendor for your organization that is keeping that data model up to date as quickly as possible. That threat intelligence. Now, I work at Microsoft, so I have to, I have to say this, but at the same time, I actually believe this because I see it myself. That threat intelligence, those trillions of signals that are captured every day, I absolutely believe that's Microsoft's value to our customers, is giving them access to that threat intelligence, right? Because that is updated, almost to the minute, right? So that stuff is pretty awesome in that we're giving that back to customers and they can take advantage of that. Otherwise, you're going to have a whole team. You talk about everybody else working on AI and generative AI right now. You got Meta, you've got Google, you got everyone else, and they're just hiring these large teams and armies of people just to update those data models. Again, I think we're on a very good position here because we've been doing this all along. We've been feeding this threat intelligence back to our customers for, the past, I don't know how many years, but a pretty long time.
Mm-hmm.
What also kind of scares me is that I think that the main difficulty will be for organizations like Microsoft building the defenses compared to a SOC. Because what I've seen, I think last week or a couple of weeks ago on Twitter, was an attacker using AI to do obfuscation of their malicious payloads. So at runtime, they would use AI to make sure that the obfuscation is brand new. No antivirus knows about that specific kind of obfuscation. So the malware just went completely through. And that kind of scares me because it's really difficult for an organization like Microsoft to protect for such an attacks. It's easier for the SOC analyst because if you see the code as a human, you will know, okay, it's probably malicious. But within products like Defender, antivirus, and EDR, it's going to be really difficult to protect against such an attacks.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's another good thing to kind of highlight. So while Microsoft provides this threat intel that's going to be kind of this threat intel across the board for anyone, every organization that uses the products or uses this tool, whether it's from Microsoft or not, is going to be 100% different than the organization next to them, even within the same industry. So it will react and work a little bit differently because of the knowledge that's required for that specific organization, right? So there's this whole case where we've talked about before. I'm sure it's been on everyone's minds when you talk about this. So there's this AI thing, right? There's this little buddy, this little co-pilot, whatever you want to call it, that sits beside you that's helping efficiency and helping your security for your environment. But at the same time, you have your data. You know about your data, HR data, things like this, and you don't want to intermingle that data at all, right? But this AI thing could actually work more intelligently if it knew about your organization, and it needs to in some respects. So there's some things that we've been working on and some things that have been discussed in the industry. How do you do this? How do you merge these two together and still keep them separate, which I think is an important piece that we'll probably discuss for the next 6 months to a year on how best to do that, through maybe it's regulation, maybe it's through some technology, maybe everybody keeps saying that this is the iPhone moment for AI, but you know,
It is, and I think that we talk about artificial intelligence, once again, debatable if it exists as of yet. But I also think that we need to think beyond the immediate use, because we tend to talk about artificial intelligence very abstractly, like it's an abstract. It's not something you install, it's something that you use. And then some people believe that the actual ability to use it is more complex than it really is. And I think that for the technologists, they really think that the ability to create this is much more complex than it really is. Now, by no means am I a machine learning AI expert, but I don't want to be on the naysayer part that says it doesn't exist because you don't know what it is. But I also be on the I'm gonna be a little bit reserved to say it is coming. To me, it looks like machine learning would help. And so I'll tilt back to what Rod was saying about, there are a couple of things around this technology, and not just related to security. I can see some really good advances in security because of it, but you got to have some big thinking, right? You got to secure this thing, and you have to make sure that it's irreputable data, the integrity and confidentiality of the data being used. And so I was taking some notes, before this, like, Rod, you like, how do we secure it? How do we make sure the legitimacy of the information that we're acting upon or allowing it to act autonomously is there? First of all, it's the data. Do we secure the data, repositories with technology that's already existing that people overhype, such as digital ledger? Are we writing our data models in a blockchain, right? So that we can confirm beyond just a typical, read write access, that it's written there and no one can go in and manipulate or alter that. We have to look at the pricing model. We're starting to see huge repositories of data from companies that were free are now charging big companies. You look at Reddit, you look at Twitter, you're not going to get access to their APIs because they realize that there is money to be made, which throws me to my third point. The pricing models is going to drive capitalization, capitalize it on this wave, which inherently is going to turn into an arms race, right? Who can come to market with something that looks very credible or have use in the industries, right? I think that a lot of the decision makers are looking at it not from it's replacing, but can it speed us up? I have yet to hear, how's it going to save me money? Beyond the atypical, we're going to let our human organic operators go, right? But I need to know, how is it going to make me money? How am I going to police it? You're going to have to see companies create artificial intelligence to detect artificial intelligence, and you can't ask it, am I a bot? It may say, what do you think? Right. And so it's also how you plug it into, does it have to be ubiquitous? I know there's going to be some IP that's going to be related to the people that invest money or who have, very specific technology innovation. But when will it become that there is a common criteria that everybody? So the regulation is going to be based on, can we find big thinkers, right? Can we find people that can think really big about this and say, hey, why we use this? There's nothing wrong with writing the regulation as you go and being sometimes behind and sometimes in front. Will it come in and just, enhance, replace, attenuate? Who knows at this point?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's easy to use. It's not intimidating unless you watch the news, and it's going to destroy humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I doubt that. We do a very good job of that ourselves.
Come with me if you want to
Right.
live.
The
Yeah.
Terminator factor. I don't think we're not anywhere near that. But I mean, hopefully
It'd be
and
cool if we
ideally,
were.
it's not replace, it's enhance folks, right? I mean, it's got to be an augmentation. Think of, I don't know, I was trying to think of a good example. I've got a Roomba, right? I've got a Siberian Husky. He sheds all the time. It's a nightmare. My Roomba's going around. It's vacuuming. Sometimes the couch needs a vacuum. That's where the human comes in, right? AI is going to be there to deal with the busy work, to deal with the low-hanging fruit. It's to assist with maybe you've got your defenders in a security operations center. We've got business email compromise as one of the top threats in the landscape these days. Do you want to be the individual going through the phishing emails and detecting and looking for all those little attributes, all those little hints over for 8 hours a day as your full-time job on this incident response project or engagement? Why can't we just ship that off, right? Why can't we ship that off and let machine learning AI, to your point, Edward, is it AI? Is it just enhanced machine learning? I don't think it's replaced people. I think it's exactly what we need to get more efficiency out of people today. Teams are always looking for ways to save time and money, and enhance the high quality work that humans can and should be in charge of versus the busy work, right? We're in life, in business, we're automating things each and every day, each and every month, things that used to take a human now are just handled automatically. I think it's a great enhancement tool, and it's only going to get better. Do I think people are actually going to get replaced because of it? No, I don't. I think there's going to be a ton of opportunity for junior defenders, blue teamers, red teamers to be able to leverage this to enhance their own skills and come in at a higher level than maybe before. But I honestly don't think we're going to see mass layoffs in cybersecurity anytime soon because of AI. It's just there's jobs out there. There's tons of roles out there. Think of it as a buddy. Think of it as a co-pilot.
Yeah, a learning tool, right?
Right,
And
a
it's
learning
funny
tool which
because-
may or may not have some ability to actually drive impact on its own, whether or not you prompt it to do that or not. But yeah, a learning tool and augmentation. Absolutely, Rod.
And it's funny because we all agree on that. I think we're all in the industry and we know that this is happening. But I was speaking with somebody who's looking into getting into IT. She wants to be a developer. And she was actually scared to get into IT because the media is scaring her that she will not have a job in 3 years. And that's just so wrong. And I don't understand why they're aiming it that way, because people will be generally scared to lose their jobs.
Yeah, I've seen that over the past 10 years. People are looking for news stories. There's not enough news stories, so they go to the almost immediate extreme for stories like this, right? It was a sad day when just regular news stuck their nose into IT's business and started producing these. Yeah, they just ruin everything, right?
Right.
Just let us IT folks deal with it. It'll be fine.
Well, didn't we go through this whole thing with automotive assembly lines, right? Automation came in, and the auto workers, were extremely concerned that jobs were going to be shipped off and gone, and humans are still there, right? Yeah, there's less of them, right? And yes, we've had to upskill certain individuals because there's not as many of those roles today. But automation in general forces humanity to upskill and up-level, and someone's got to manage these automation systems, whether they're physical, whether they're virtual, whether they're intelligent. So we need individuals who are smart in prompting, who are managing the AI itself. These roles are blossoming now. So take an opportunity to look at yourself and your role today and say, am I at risk? Well, and if I think I am, upskill. Get some more knowledge, take some training, see if there's a way that you can enhance your career. I think it's an opportunity, and it should be looked at as such.
And one thing that we forget as once again, human operators, that we have a history that we can go back to that is beyond just reading text. You'll notice that the machine models are text, right? So it is hard to convey. If I would tell AI, sing me, to this melody, the resolution you had around this, so if I had to come back and say, by MDE, that seems insensical to a computer that's looking at logic. But sometimes logic is going to be necessary the lack of logic is going to be necessary to solve problems. Remember, this AI stuff, until they get to what Brodie just talked about, and what we talked about with Rand jokingly last week, was predictive, right? Majority report type stuff, right? Because otherwise you're still looking in the past, right? It's still 0 days out there. And so when AI is solving a problem, it's looking at historical events and tasks and things that have been documented. Net new things will be the thing that makes it ineffectual of a sort, because now you're asking it to guess. And once again, I said it has an insatiable desire to give you an answer, right or wrong. It wants to give you an answer, right? And that's where we get what they call it hallucinations. Well, you don't want a hallucination that could ultimately cause a either immediate manifestation of more insecurity, or what if you don't know, right?
Yeah.
So you have to look at it and say, everyone, don't talk about AI as this wave that is coming and the wheat will be cold and everything else. It's nothing more than another tool that allows massive amounts of data to be considered so that a person who has experience, you know, I hand the floor back over, but to all our listeners that go out there, I'll say this, and the next time we get on any of the other, AI models, whether it be related to security or just the technology in itself, it's not intelligence until it can do self-harm or it can lie to you. When it can lie to you purposely, and lying is not giving a bad answer. Lying is, I know what the right answer is, but I choose not to give it to you, right? Then you start dealing with intelligence, which is
Yeah.
boom, and and it's bad at what we as we operate as sentient beings. Now in security, speed, being able to come in and get the nuances of things that have happened in the past already, the ability to access massive data sets in a shared model. If you find partners in this thing, you're going to have some type of collective. You're not going to be able to have a single security company or two or three or four. Some type of collective has to come together so that they share that telemetry and be able to look at it, right? Rather than being first to market or first with that. Um, does it make each job better? Not necessarily until you improve how the traditional SIM works, whether it be cloud-based, on-premise based, a combination of both. You're still just sticking a high performance, Porsche engine inside of a Cooper. It's the potential is there. So I just like watching it, seeing what's happening. Uh, I'll give you this, Rod. The news is sensationalizing this, but it does raise some questions if you listen enough
Yeah.
about how to use the technology.
Yeah. Well, and maybe those headlines are AI generated. Maybe it's just trying to generate the fluff itself. And obviously, we've already learned one other thing today is that AI did not generate the by MDE song. Edward did.
Yeah,
What a great
and,
thought.
and you have to be careful about it is trying to solve a solution. Look
Yeah.
at what the technology does. So if you tell it to solve it, you're telling something that operates almost purely on logic, programmed and self-learned. AI is helping write ML, and the ML is getting better so that AI gets better. Because if it's vacuuming the house and it's always getting up hair, the logical thing is get rid of the dog.
Yeah.
That's that's perfect.
What happened to the dog? Well,
Right.
AI.
Let's go to the source of the problem.
Let's
Yeah,
go to the source of the problem, eliminate the
that's
problem.
the
Because
Terminator scenario. Yeah.
or you could say, I need you to secure my environment as best you could. Okay, air gap your network.
Right. Disconnect from the internet. Right. Good
Yeah.
point. Yeah. Hey, problem solved. Yeah.
Stop
That's a good
reading
point,
those
Edward.
terrible headlines. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
So is it realistic? Just a potential example. I mean, you can tell me whether this is something that maybe you can already do today, or maybe something that Security Copilot might be able to help a junior SOC analyst with. So, for instance, if you're using Sentinel and you need to look at that historical data, if you wanted to do anything in any detail, as far as I understand, you probably need to understand how to write a query in, is it KQL, as I understand? Could something like Security Pilot take away that necessity for a junior analyst to have to learn KQL and provide an answer by just feeding it a natural language query, and here's the answer? Or is that, science fiction?
Now, it absolutely could do that. I would highly suggest those junior analysts still attempt to learn KQL because it's necessary for more than just security, right? So it's data science and everything within the cloud, Azure in particular. Knowing KQL is going to be a huge plus for that individual. However, yes, so that's another piece of this, and I think we go back maybe 6 months, maybe even a little bit longer. That was one of the things that was brought up initially as this started kind of this breakthrough iPhone moment in November, December last year with generative AI and ChatGPT and things like that, was a lot of our customers, they look at some of our security products, like, you know, everything that's been defenderized or Microsoft Sentinel, and there is this query language, KQL query language. It's not difficult to learn, but it is something additional that is almost necessary to be able to have, you know, some simple understanding of. That was one of the things that was brought up almost immediately. Hey, can't we train this chat GPT, this API? Can't we train these data models to understand KQL? And I think probably one of the first things that I ever did with the public version of ChatGPT was, hey, I asked it for some KQL queries. Knowing KQL the way I do, I looked at the queries that were a result. They were pretty good. But they needed to be tuned quite a bit. In some instances, they would have produced the wrong result anyway. But again, it's about training these data models. So as things progress, as time goes along, these things and the data models are continuing to be trained. These things will get better and better and better, primarily from those people that use it and providing that feedback, right? So you don't know what you don't know. So as customers, as people, users continue using these, they need to have a model or have some mechanism to provide that feedback, and that feedback has to be on spot. It can't be like an Amazon product review where you just go in there and write silly things, right? It has to be accurate with that response. So there's always that as well. So we have to be able to detect that. But it can today produce KQL. And again, it goes back to what I was talking about earlier. It has to know a little bit about that environment as well, right? Every environment is different. The profile of that user community within that organization is different. People click on different things. They react different ways. They all kind of have their own personality. So that tool needs to kind of know a little bit about this environment to produce a KQL query that is actually going to find the information that you want.
That's maybe the first step I think we should take if we're talking about junior analysts and AI. Is I think that's the low-hanging fruit. It's finding those business contexts and those little things which take a lot of your time during the day. But if you can automate it pretty easily, it will save so much time for a junior analyst. I think Brodie talked about looking into emails and looking into all of the little details in an email. If we can just train a model to look into, okay, what is normal for this person to receive? Does he receive lots of invites to webinars? Does he is he in finance? Does he get asked to pay a lot of invoices? I think things like that. It's the low-hanging fruits, which in my opinion should already be possible today to decrease the work effort for a junior stock analyst. I have had worst experience with ChatGPT and KQL. When I threw something at it, it just tried to write a query, but using operators which did not even exist. And I think that's also what Edward was saying. It wants to provide you an answer, and it will provide you the wrong answer. So I tried like five or six different times, and it just wouldn't run. It wouldn't let me have that KQL query run.
Yeah, and you have to look at it. You know, look at it as a autonomous type of, not autonomous, but you know, the data, we are in security, so we're hyper focused on how it can either make our job better, faster, replace us, but look at the overall ramifications of doing this. So I'm going to test it in ways that I've come up in my 30 plus years in information technology and security. I would come to Rod or anyone on here and say, what do you think? I'm seeing something, man. What do you think this is? Right? Try that at any one of these generative, products out there, and you'll start to get squirrely answers. You start asking questions that are generally based on experience and conscience. Hey, man, how do you feel about this? Do you think this is a good idea? Have you seen this before? So when you start going into these, this is the things that it won't be able to insert itself with a sense of authority, right? Because it doesn't have a sense of consequence. And when you do things without a sense of consequence, purely logic, you sort of go, there is no risk, there is no fallout, there is no impact. And so AI would do something that could absolutely take down your business, right? Unless you put guardrails in here to say, hey, you stop here, don't do this, don't automate this, don't cut. AI will look at the CEO's email and believe because it hit whatever logic it had to go ahead and isolate that person's email, lock out their account, isolate their machine. A human will look at that and say, yeah, that's possible, but it's also possible that those are pink slip generation things, right? You pick up the phone. The phone's still going to be one of the most powerful things you can use to be able to validate and invalidate something, right? Pick up something, talk to someone, and then go, okay, this is real. So look at it from a standpoint of don't help it. So everyone wants to help it because they want it to win. You want to ask very pointed questions to be able to get it to give you the input. You want it to give the answer that you want, but give it nonsensical information based on the way we work, right? Like if I can't figure something out, I say, Brodie, have you seen this before? Because I can't quite figure this out. Or what do you think? Then we're starting to get into it, right? And then you start looking at things when you get into that, the very thing that is AI is going to power the things necessary to be able to answer those questions to get closer to human interaction. We're not going to get AI without quantum computing. That's not going to happen. It's the first quantum computers. We all got one sitting on the top of our necks, right? Because we can fathom the unfathomable, right? We can look at the absurd, and then and it's fantasy and it's laugh, or you can dream. So AI doesn't do that, right? So until you can get something that can look at quantum spookiness, quantum entanglement, quantum relations, you can buy all the NVIDIA chips in the world and stack them into an Empire State Building. That is not quantum computing, right? Quantum computing is able to look forward and backwards at the same time, right?
But you'd have a heck of a Bitcoin mining operation.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a total another thing, right? And yeah, but we had some questions we were asking here, but if we were to go down and just look at these things, will it affect the way that we look at endpoint protection? Absolutely. Speed. What did we look at the ability to affect the way that companies are using security information, event monitoring, SIM? Yes, it will, because it's going to be able to take human habits who want to log everything and say, okay, if you must log everything, let's go through a point where we can go through these faster than you ever could, or we come back and tell you, why are you getting this log? This log has no value. We haven't done anything with this. It has no historical value. We'll just capture it for the sake of capturing. And so we have to look at the very specific use cases for it. It is not an all up, in my opinion, it is not an all up place of replacing your comrades. You do so at your own risk.
Absolutely.
Okay. Right. I do have a few other questions. Obviously, we've already gone way over time, so we can either just go through them quickly if you'd like to, or we can wrap it up, whatever you prefer to do.
I got 10
We've only
minutes.
got we got 10 minutes, so what we might do is use the edited version for the conference, and then have a slightly extended version that we put out at a later date.
After the dig. Yep. There you go.
Yes. Yep. All right. So I wanted to ask a couple of questions really concerning really the endpoint protection piece of all of this.
Yeah.
So I got a couple of questions really regarding Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, if that's the correct terminology, Rod, because it seems to keep changing every few months.
It is currently.
Okay, great. So I know that Microsoft has been gradually expanding the protection to non-Windows operating systems. So Linux, Mac OS, even mobile operating systems. Is that correct, or did I just make that up? Okay.
No, that's right. Yeah.
So is Defender able to provide the necessary level of protection that it can afford to Windows? Should I trust this product with my Linux and Mac OS endpoints? Is I guess what I'm asking.
Well, it's certainly far more like for like in terms of a feature and capability set than during its inception. It's come a long way in the last few years, especially branching out to Mac OS, Linux, Android, and iOS. Sorry, no Windows Phone. And yeah, it obviously Microsoft Windows bread and butter. It's built into the operating system for modern Windows operating systems. 10, 11, server, etc. And you're really just activating a feature that's already there. But yeah, the teams, the product management teams, the product groups, they've made huge strides in ensuring that it meets the same stringent requirements for antivirus, for endpoint detection and response, for vulnerability management capabilities on Mac OS and Linux and mobile. And it's consistently scoring high when you look at all these third-party scoring capabilities. Are there going to be scenarios where another solution may have a capability that ours does not? Yeah, that almost always will happen between different vendors. But today, in the current landscape, I would trust it. And you always have to do an assessment, right? Assess, make sure that it meets your needs. You could have an edge case, and it may not work for you, and that's fine. You need to, as the security architects and leadership of the organization, understand what your priorities are and weigh those against the different solutions. And I know I'm biased because I work here, but I'm really close to Defender for Endpoint regularly, and today it's in a great spot across all the operating system versions and capabilities.
When I think, yeah, and I think that's huge. That's an important piece, right, to kind of highlight, is that you start out with, the way it started to today. And if you look at the majority of our products, and particularly the security stack, they're all like that. The way they started, there's that meme, how it started, what it is today, or however that meme goes. But I always tell our customers, what you see today, the way it exists and the way it started, that was all based on customer feedback, right? So customers said, we need this Linux stuff, we need this Mac stuff, we need this mobile stuff. We're using this, these other third-party tools. We're actually using 25 tools to do this one thing for our environment. And I think from a Microsoft perspective, and I've seen this across the product groups, they kind of took that on as like their goal. We need to fix this for our customers, because our ultimate goal here is to ensure that our customers can be secure no matter what. Because those, as those customers that are using those 25 tools to do that one thing, you have customers that are using nothing, right? And so the idea is we have to be able to provide the best holistic opportunity for all of our customers to take advantage of security, no matter what it is that they use, no matter what exists within their environment. And that's what you see with the Defender and everything else, everything that's been Defenderized. We still have a few non-Defender products, but I'm sure that'll change eventually. Just close your eyes, take a nap, and it'll be changed. So,
yeah, I think as a customer, I can agree. I think if you look at, for example, Defender for Endpoint for Linux, 2 years ago at the earliest, that was really painful. We had so many issues deploying that at customer. But now we're doing large deployments, both for macOS and for Linux, to customers. And it's been smooth sailing. Of course, it's still Microsoft. It's still Windows native. And you see most new features are still coming out only to Windows 11 and 10, which is unfortunate. But it is a heavy catch-up. And I'm really happy with the performance and the detection and prevention mechanism I have seen, where it would say, yes, you can deploy it. There's just those tiny bits and pieces. For example, if I want to run an AV scan for Windows, I can get into the security portal, click run AV scan, it's scanning. Do that for macOS, you need to upload the script into live response and run that script using live response. And I think those final stages, if we would solve those, it would go a long way for customers as well.
Yeah, I think that, to be very honest, that the parity will never be even close to 1-to-1. Everyone said it in some form or fashion before me, is that the market drives behavior. But you also have to look at what is the current operational landscape, right? Windows is still the primary endpoint interaction device for folks that are doing their job, both business and pleasure. When you look at Linux, you have to look at, why would I put a lot of emphasis on defending or creating a endpoint protection for a Linux desktop? I'm going to be more concerned with Linux workloads that drive the internet, right? And so when you look at it from that one, you need to step back a little bit further and go, now I have two particular landscapes of way Linux is deployed. Is it deployed on premise or is it deployed in someone's cloud? And if it is, you reduce the requirements and around all of the feature sets necessarily being in the endpoint protection, because they're going to be some inherent protections based on the cloud, right? If you look at Azure, I can't give you the numbers, but I can tell you that there are more Linux workloads that are running companies than there are Windows servers running. So I would be looking at the tools that are inherent within the platform where your workloads are residing and use that in combination with the endpoint protection. Defending a Linux, desktop environment for someone who's, what are you doing on Linux desktop? Developing. And so if you look at Mac, Mac is out there, but you have to go back to the business. Is this a landscape that I want to compete in to draw those customers away? It's the Mac use case and out there. Does it warrant me putting more effort into this so that I can bring these things in there make the parity almost, line in line with Windows? To look at it from a purely technology standpoint, that's very AI-ish. You got to use logic, right? Is it going to make me money before I put a lot of this development effort in? And if I don't, am I concerned about losing the market share on that particular aspect, which really doesn't drive a majority of the business overall? Now, that's not to say that you don't need virus protection and tamper protection on non-Windows workloads. What Apple in particular, this was a huge opportunity for them for years. They control the hardware and they control their distro. They should have written the software. It doesn't seem like they have an appetite for it, right? Mm-hmm. And it was the reputation incorrectly that Macintosh devices didn't get viruses. Well, think about it from this way: you may not be affected by it, but you're the carrier. You're typhoid Mary, right? You're not getting sick, but everybody around you is getting sick, so now you're a carrier of it, right? So with that, I think that yes, it'll get closer. I think that the time period between parity will be shorter, but a one-to-one, sir, I don't see it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. So I think we're going to have to wrap up because we're at the top of the hour anyway. But it's been a great, really interesting discussion. I could certainly have gone on for a lot longer, but unfortunately we don't have time today. But I'd like to thank all of the panelists. And as Rod mentioned, I forgot to mention at the beginning that Brodie, Edward, and Rod are part of the hosts of the Microsoft Security Insights show, which you can find on YouTube and all your favorite podcasting networks. Is that right?
That's correct. Yep, absolutely.
Right. Yep. So please do check that out. And I'd like to thank all of the guests. So Edward, Brodie, Rod, and Thijs. And thank you very much. And we'll see you all for the next session. If you enjoyed the video, then please give it a like and let me know in the comments below how you think AI is going to change the security landscape over the coming months and years. But that's it from me for this week, and I'll see you next time.